Hello, friends. Welcome. This is part two of Tell It Like It Is. We are talking with Roberto Schiraldi, and this episode has been titled All Life is Sacred. And we're really just chipping away at the surface of um, love being the what life is all about and the fundamental element of what the world needs more of, and trying to understand the role that men play in in history and in trying to move forward, and understanding the dynamic and the roadblocks at play. The divine masculine and the divine feminine needs to be in flow and vulnerable so that we can heal vulnerably and progress. Now, so we I'm a big fan of Martin Luther King, and his nonviolent methods are are very famous, and I do fundamentally believe that is the best way to protest. Um, but there comes a time when I think there's going to be we're really going to be tested in that department. And I'm not sure how it's going to play out or how it's meant to play out. Meaning, do we have to somehow physically fight to overthrow the system? And is it a nonviolent overthrow that's needed? And what is that going to look like? Um, Obviously, no one wants that. But I think I don't know. I really don't know. But I think at some point, the good people have to take a stand. And I don't think it needs to be violent, but you know, when I don't know, I think America is the perfect place for that issue to kind of manifest itself. And I think at the core, the police and the military are people first, and obviously their their motto is serve and protect. And I think if we non-violently resist, I think ultimately they would stand down and join us. So you kind of made a reference to you don't think we would win that battle.
I mean, I hope you're right, Alec. I do agree with you. I think uh, a lot of folks who work with the police and military would join. I, I, I think that would take a lot of doing, a lot of work to. I think they'd have to really be convinced that they weren't going to really lose big time if they did that. That it wouldn't really threaten their existence and their families' safety and everything else. And as we know, in the military and the police, to speak out for justice and be part of those two systems is really hard. You really jeopardize your safety within your own ranks and potentially the safety of your family and everything. I think I hope I pray that ideally that you're right that they would join, and I hope that it doesn't have to be violent. I know lots of wise people have said that people at the top have never willingly given up their power unless they were forced to. I'm
Right.
hoping, like I said before in the first part, that it could start with one or two, a few brave men side by side, as you pointed out, with women guiding us because they have the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine in the Lakota teachings. They're called two spirit. That we each have two spirits in us: the spirit of the sacred feminine, sacred masculine, and they're the highest qualities of both. The And then I believe that we all have that, the courage, the strength, the integrity, the gentleness, the kindness, the compassion. It's in all of us. I just wish we were taught that more, and not taught to be alienated from our own, the truest, highest core of who we really are. Yeah. So I hope you're right, Alexi. I really do. And of course, I think women have been the ones who've been oppressed since day one, all across the board, racially and everything else. So uh, we have to not let them. I say I did it again. My partner just corrected me. It's not, oh, you'd let us? No, we'd have to ask for guidance and there's a book I have on my shelf out there, a little book called "Do We Need a Woman President?" I've always felt that way, but it needs to be a woman. It doesn't matter if the woman's trans, you know, Latina, whatever. If he or she's still emulating the same value system, then nothing changes. That's why it has to be a values issue. That we're choosing healthier values. What do you think?
I'm really focused on. I've really thought a lot about this, and most people who I talk to who are woke, who are activists, who are doing the good work, they don't think that big change can happen in their lifetime, or they don't even imagine it. So really my thing that I champion is that big change, right? We have to, we have to rewrite the Constitution. We have to
Mm,
rewrite these
mm, mm.
and and,
Yes.
and really get to the core of it.
Yes.
The United Nations in theory is a good place to also do a lot of good work. And I think, if America says we are now going to value the life of all of our citizens equally, that would shift America's values, and I think the world would follow suit. Right now, China, Russia, they're trying to. Still a power struggle, right? We're all trying to get a little more, build bigger weapons and bigger technologies and bigger economies at the expense of people. We know that very well. So no one's debating that. And I think we just need the everyday people, the you and me's, we need to be clear about this, that we are making a conscious shift. So you don't have to quit your job to make a conscious shift. You just need to open up your heart to connect to neighbors, right? Once you've opened up your heart and you begin to collect to neighbors, now the collective community can open itself up and connect to other communities. And now that by itself is a radical shift. So it's less about Democrat and Republican and more about who gets us and who's going to put things in place that really benefit the people. And I don't think it's really a political issue at all. I think it's really in the hearts of the people, the you and me's, the people who talk to their neighbors. I try to go to church. I mean, I frequently go to church habitually. And when I do go to church, I'm often shocked by how much the church feels like everything else.
Mm,
And that's my biggest motivation to start my own church. Not because I'm a
wow.
spiritual activist, not because I'm a spiritual expert, but because church is that one place that when you walk through that door, it should feel different. That's the point of church. Like we're called out, we're called apart, and that's the whole premise of what I want to do. Less because I think I would be a great pastor or a great leader, but more because I would call it out, and that would be the ultimate foundation of what we're doing. Like this work that I'm talking about, it's radical, but it's simple. You don't need a PhD and $1 million. You just need to shake your neighbor's hand and invite them for coffee. You know,
Mm.
if you're going to church every week, it shouldn't feel the way it does. It should feel like this place is radically different. And when you say, hey, neighbor, I dare you to come to my church and tell me you don't love it. And when that neighbor comes through that church, he should be like, whoa, I never been to a place like this. Instead, you go to church and it feels like everywhere else. So it's like, why am I going to wake up extra early, get dressed up to be with the same fake people? And it's just a weird thing. So I really don't, I get it. You know, the church begins to acclimate itself to the environment. And most people who use church, they just use it, like you said, it's a quick fix to deal with the world as opposed to an alternate lifestyle. So I have all of these radical ideas, and I that's also a part of the podcast is to share them. And for me to have these kinds of conversations on the record, right? I have these conversations all the time off the record. I'm doing this work every day, and I'm amazed by how resistant good people are to small steps and how much I have to pull, and how prevalent fear is. I can go on and on and on, but it's really interesting to see it playing out in real life. People are afraid to, like, I'm a father of three. I go everywhere with my kids. Like, my neighbors see me every day. I don't think they think I'm gonna kill them or, kidnap them, but there's still this kind of reservation of like, let me walk around. And one of the important things that where our society works or our culture works is don't be needy. So you
Mm.
can be depressed, you can be isolated, you can be whatever, but we're very much not needy. So people self medicate, you can self medicate with TV, food, you can even self medicate with spirituality. We're doing all of these things not to appear needy, not to just go outside and hug our neighbor and sit and have dinner with them. I'm amazed by how you can have a neighbor. We've been in this physical house since 2019, and you don't say, hey, let's have a dinner. So I'm working on that. And I'm working on, like, I have enough stress and chaos in my life with the kids and trying to make money that it's hard for me to just plan dinners. And
Oh,
I'm
oh.
very I'm very easygoing. I can easily say that to someone, but now I have to deal with their perception. And their perception is, yeah, what are we gonna eat? And now I have to, like, impress them with a menu. And so that's one of the hurdles that I face is when you say you want to host someone, you have to impress them. You cannot just invite them to something that's not impressive.
Well, Princeton's the ultimate place in the universe for making good impressions. That's why I feel so uncomfortable here. And you start that church, Lexi. I'll be right there with you,
Yeah,
happily.
I so for me, I try to understand spirituality, right? And spirituality is the whatever it is you practice to remind yourself that you are spiritual. So obviously, we're physical, we're flesh and blood, but we are spiritual, which means that we exist as a thought, right? And as a thought, that means we're just a thought in God's head, right? So we're physical here because physical things also exist as a thought in God's head. But ultimately, we're a spirit. So our spirituality is what you practice to remind yourself you're a spirit. And that's what Hinduism labels as duality, right? The duality of being physical and also being a spirit. So it's interesting how much Christianity has separated itself from Hinduism, Buddhism, and the other spiritual traditions. And it's when I talk to my Christian friends, it's interesting how much they tell me that no, those people I can't be with them because they don't get it. And I'm like, okay, sure, they don't get this, they don't get that, very important. But the fundamental thing is we're all one, right? And you know how long it took me to figure out that Jamaica's motto, One Love, is just that? Like, One Love is just a reminder that we all came from the same God of spirit and we're just a spirit. So
Mm.
imagine coming from a country that has that motto. And, I think that has an impact on who I am also. And, and my journey to where I am now and where we have to go.
The one love in Jamaica. I mean, here's a country that has that as their, well, but a lot of countries have nice sounding things like, America says, oh, liberty and justice for all, when, as you said before, the Constitution wasn't ever intended that way. It didn't, that's why it didn't include women. It didn't include, black men were counted three-fifths of a person, and Native people weren't included either. So how are you going to say that's for all the people? It was never intended for all the people. But so one love, how many people in Jamaica are reared with that as the main theme, in their families and their hearts of hearts?
I think most Jamaicans don't really know what that really means. Like the way I just described it, I don't think they experience it that way. Jamaican culture has been influenced by Indian culture, and
Mm.
um, part of the Indian culture has that Hinduism in it, and we obviously have Christianity, and so we get what it means on a superficial level, but we're subjected to all the Western division, capitalist kinds of things, and it's normalized at this point. Too much. If you consume too, media is like the opposite of spirituality, right? Spirituality reminds you you're a spirit. Media reminds you that you're physical. So you do need a both, but you have to practice a non-dualism where you juggle the dualism, but you know that it's not two separate things. So yeah, I think I want to teach that. I want to remind people, and I want to live that, and I want people to keep me accountable, and that's what I do, and that's what it's all about.
Did Bob Marley and Ziggy and all them, did they really, when you listen to the words of the songs, and did they live that
But
principle?
I think Bob Marley's song, I would play Bob Marley's song in my church.
Yeah, yeah,
Bob
exactly.
Marley, I mean, I can't, I haven't studied all of his songs, but I can tell you some of the songs that I know are very powerful, and they really speak to that, you know. And before the Europeans came to America, they didn't have fences, right? So the idea of fences and borders didn't exist. So one love is the opposite of borders and fences, and if you have $1 billion and you don't step outside your home and go down to the people in the inner cities and bless them, that's not one love, right? It's that simple.
It is. You keep saying it's that simple, and I totally agree with you. It is that simple.
Yeah. I everyone who I encounter, I really try to go to that place with them, and they're like, yes, 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 and their eyes light up, and I see them come alive. We exchange contact information, but deep down, they have a lot of work to do. And I think for me, I've really I try to make myself more and more accessible, the biggest thing that I'm working on now is starting social groups and doing social events, to just have safe spaces where people can come to and meet other people. And for me, it's a big step. And I think going into this fall, I'm going to more actively pursue that. I've had enough I've had enough interactions where I feel like the universe is saying, "All right, what are you waiting for?" So that's where I'm at personally, and I'm going to share that journey on the podcast, on social media, and hoping that it's a catalyst and it catches on.
Yeah. You know what you were saying before, when you walk out there and you talk to people one on one, there was this training I went to, they were talking about that as a major strategy, is what they're calling deep canvassing. When you talk to people one on one, you knock on the door and say, "Hey, how do you feel about what's going on around here?" And if you asked all the people, no matter who they voted for, whether Democrats, Republicans, or even independent, whatever, everybody wants the same. Most people believe that there shouldn't be poverty, that everyone should have food and clothing and shelter and a job and health care. Everybody agrees on that. The problem is when you come down, I guess, when you start going past that to, well, I don't know, how are you going to ensure that happening? You know,
Who's going
unless
to
the
pay
people
for
to,
it? That's the big.
huh?
Who's going to pay
Yeah,
for
and
it? That's the big
there's
question.
plenty of money. There's plenty of money to go around. That's not the issue. The issue is, though, if the people at the top are holding on so strongly to their billions, and don't see the importance of somehow making sure that everyone else gets their equitable share.
There's a
That's
scarcity mindset, and I think
yeah,
before I ask someone in Princeton with middle class status to go to Trenton or some outside neighborhood to give away money and resources, I'm just asking them to connect with their fellow neighbors.
yeah,
So meals cost less when they're made in bulk. So it has a financial practicality to it. So it's that simple. Connect to your neighbors. If you are in a spiritual community, you should be having at least one meal per week with them. To me, that's the bare minimum you can ask from a spiritual community. So if you're in a spiritual community and you only see them for less than 2 hours and there's no meal, to me it's like, what are you really doing? Like what's happening there? Sometimes I've talked to pastors who are like, oh no, they'll never go for it. And as the pastor, you have to go out on a limb to make it happen. And if the pastor is saying we must have this meal, let's have this meal, and you're resisting that, he should just start with the few who's on board with that. And I think it'll catch on. I think everything that I suggest is things that I think will catch on. I'm not asking people to take a flight, go somewhere, spend money, and go rescue the kids in Africa. Ultimately, that should happen, but more importantly, you need to just where you're at, the people you're around. And that's all I surround myself with. That's the spiritual work I think we all should be doing.
yeah. I agree with you, Lexi. I mean, breaking bread has with your neighbor, with your loved ones, with your family. That's since the beginning of time. It's how people connect. That's a sacred act. Eating together. Yeah. But yeah, I want to add, I guess the but comes in. You know, you led off saying some people you've talked to don't believe it's possible to make significant broader change. And I'm one of those people. I wrote a poem recently about, the White House needs to be, I censored myself from my first language. I said the White House needs to be disassembled, I'd said. I really had much stronger language, and rebuilt and called the Rainbow House, not the White House. And that we need to start over, recreate a system that really is for everyone. But how's that going to happen realistically in my life? I'm 77. My partner's dying. I don't know how much time I got left. So realistically, I don't want to come from a place of urgency, and that's when I get on this male soapbox thing. I have to be really careful because I feel a sense of urgency, and I know that's not when I'm there. I'm counterproductive. I want to have faith, and I believe at the deepest level, what you're saying is true, Alexei. That we all want the same thing, and coming together in small groups with our neighbors and eating together is a beautiful thing. Totally, totally agree with that. Is it going to have a big systemic change in my lifetime in the next however many years I got left? I have faith that anything's possible. That's for sure. Would I bet on it? I bet on you. I bet on you. I do bet on that we could draw people who have the same value system and who want to come from a place of love and open-heartedness. And that would, and maybe that's all that really matters in the big scheme of things, because I don't have control over the world. I'm not that powerful. I don't, or Princeton for sure, or any place in this country. But I do have control over you and me, how I interact with you, who I bring to the table. Do I bring my loving self? I can do that. That's the one thing I know I can do, and I trust that that's what you want to do. It's like I know I can feel, I see you, I can feel you. More than that, I probably need to let go of. I'll keep working on it, doing my part with every breath that I have left in me. So that's been my commitment for as long as I can remember. But do I have faith realistically that in my lifetime someone's going to step up? It's possible, for sure.
Well, the point is the change is not going to be top down, right? That's what I'm suggesting here. You're not going to have a president who's going to come and say America needs to come together, and then the people are going to get behind him, and then everyone's going to vote for him, and then he becomes the president, and then we all start shifting, right? It's not going to be top down. I think the change is bottom up. So yes, it's scary. Um, if it hasn't happened, if you haven't done, if you're not doing your part, it's not going to happen, right? So if you wake up today, know you're not doing your part, you're not going to be confident that it's going to happen tomorrow outside of you, right? That change needs to come from all of us. And that's where I challenge myself. Like you need a pure heart, right? Because we can see each other. Like everything I'm saying is nice and everything I'm doing is nice. But I'm still working to purify my heart. You know, I think if you ask me, one of my biggest struggles is like how I have issues with like not having financial security. So I have some issues with that. And if you're really leading something like the church or something, and you have that feeling in your heart of financial insecurity, it can affect your judgment. And people sense that, and it comes through in these indirect ways. So that's a blockage to really doing that work on that bigger, consistent level. Like I can say I want a church, but for me to manifest that, I really have to work on that block as well. Um,
Mm.
I feel like I have issues like with lust with women. And I think when I interact with women, I think that plays as well. So when I'm inviting you to this wholesome lunch and this wholesome let's get together, I think that plays a role as well. So these little blocks in our heart, even though we see them and we're trying to see past them, if you really don't do your work on those blocks in your heart, you're not going to be able to fully radiate what you need to radiate to create what you want to create. And I'm aware of it, and I'm doing that work. And the other block too, I think, is I'm kind of lazy. Like, I can, after this podcast, go take notes, write an essay about it, and then try to bring in some historical references and some literary references and then publish it. And I think that would help strengthen the work. Am I gonna do that? Probably not. I'm kind of lazy. So I want these things, I want to manifest these things, but you have to move those blockages from your life, from your heart to manifest anything you want to manifest. And that comes from practice. So you have to do that daily work, that hourly work, that weekly work, and just keep yourself accountable. That's really, really hard, right? It's easy to go to work for
Yeah.
8 hours, get paid, and then come home, eat dinner, and relax, right? It's hard to go to a job for 8 hours, but it's easier than trying to strengthen your heart and going through all of those deeper rooted things and healing all your traumas. So I understand why it's not happening. um, I'm just working to be in a place where I'm able to do that work for me, so that other people will say, "Wow, Alexi did that work. Let me go do my work." So no, it's not
Mm.
going to happen tomorrow, because we all have so much work to do and we're not actively doing it, and we don't have heroes on a pedestal who's doing it. So we kind of know it's okay to be laid back, and we just kind of lay back and just say, "Oh yeah, it's messed up," and that's the deal, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that. I mean, lust for women, financial insecurity, laziness. Um, and I know the most important thing I can do is keep healing my heart, keep learning how to be a more loving, kind, compassionate man with myself so that I can then share that with all other life. And I'll be doing that. I committed to doing that when I decided I wasn't going to check out when I was in my early 40s after I got out of the service. I decided I wasn't going to kill myself. I wasn't going to check out. I was going to commit myself. And I've stayed to that commitment to learn how to be a better man, how to love myself, forgive myself, be more loving to all other life. And for the most part, I think I do a pretty good job of it. But I'm nowhere finished on the journey and never will be and maybe when I pass over, then maybe I've gotten it. So I'm going to always keep doing it. That's my commitment. Um, so I honor you for you being willing to put yourself, opening in your heart and telling it like it is, and for being willing to be vulnerable. All the things we've talked about here, you're living it, and I'm committed to doing the same thing. Sometimes I suck at it and I fall short, and then I'm really harsh on myself, and then other times I do it pretty well. So, and I just love that you're willing to continue to be the best man that you can be in spite of all the shit that you've had to deal with and continue to have to deal with. And here you are, a father of three boys, helping to do one of the most important things in the world is to be a good model for three young men, being a partner to a wife a partner who you love, who is in an important place where she's working, and you're willing to be honest about your vulnerabilities. I mean, to me, you're the beacon of hope for me.
I see a lot of things to be hopeful for, and I see the journey. um if we all like woke up tomorrow and started doing our own work holistically, we could break through this thing in a short period of time. But everyone's lifespan's different, everyone's journey's different, everyone's in a different place. So that solidarity is not there right now. And you just have to start wherever you're at and do the best you can that day, you know. Um
Mm.
I'm blessed to just to I think heaven is not a place you go when you die. I think heaven is something that you achieve in life. So the way you purifying your heart and living a certain way, that's your version of heaven. And I'm not trying to contradict what the Bible says. I'm just trying to say I think that version of heaven is attainable for everyone in their lifetime. And that's what the Bible really wants us to do. It wants us to live the life, not just sit on the couch waiting for the life when we die. It wants us to do that work while we're alive and actively pursue it in a real way, like nothing's more important. Like once you realize that nothing's more important, you're going to shift. And I acknowledge that shift in others, and I encourage that shift in others and myself. And that's what we call being born again.
Uh,
So
yeah.
yeah, there was a I one of the things that I tend to do sometimes is I tend to give challenges to people because I it's easy for me to see ways that other people can do more. I remember I had a guest who was going to like a college reunion, and I was basically saying that between you and all your class classmates, if you guys set up a challenge for yourself and you guys all work towards it, that would make headlines. And then the other graduates from the other years, some of them would start to take suit, and then it would begin a movement, and it would spread to other colleges, right? A place like Princeton University has a lot of intelligent minds, and it's very easy if they came together and had a conference, and they made certain resolutions and they actively work towards it. You can still do your job, you can still have your endowment, you can still keep everything going, but also have this resolution that you're working towards. That would catch on. So there's a way we can all get involved and we can do it on all levels. But again, you have to be willing to upset the status quo. And most people, when you enter a social group, the last thing you want to do is upset the status quo. So I fully understand that. It's a lot of stress and work, and I don't judge people who aren't ready to do that work. But in the meantime, our physical society is going through it. People are dying, people are struggling, people are starving, people are depressed. All of these things are happening while we're still on our internal struggle. So if you really want to help the external world, you have to do the internal work and connect to others. And I think that's the whole message of everything I'm about. And it's difficult to hear, difficult to start. Where do we start? It's difficult to look past another person's shortcomings and say, you know what, I'm still going to stick this out with you. And as I get older, I understand those things more and more, so I judge people less, and I judge the state of the world less. And I say, if I'm not even willing to stop my bad habits, how can I judge the outside world for stuff that's been happening for 5,000 years, for 500 years, when I can't even stop stuff in my life that's been happening for 10, 15, 20 years? So that's how I look at it. And instead of judging the world, or judging myself, I give myself grace and I give the world grace and just start there. That's the softening of the heart. Don't expect 7 billion people to soften their heart when you're struggling to soften your heart with that little neighbor next door. It's that simple. Start on the interpersonal level and again, bottom up, you know, and that's it. I think that was Jesus's message, right?
Yeah.
So I'll forever be a Christian because that's what I understand his message to be.
Yeah, I'm not going to identify myself as a Christian because of how bastardized the word has become. But I do believe Christ, that was his message, love thy neighbor as thyself, as you love yourself. But that's not taught. That part is lost in the translation, that softening of the heart. Because that's the core of it. If I don't love myself, I'm not going to love anybody or anything else. It's that simple, like you said. And I'd like you and me to go around canvassing and asking everyone, how you doing with your beautiful soft heart? How you doing with that? I think
I
that'd be a great way.
I know that you're in the middle of a big family situation, and I pray for you and all that you have going on, and you know that's a part of your journey, and you reach others through your journey, and in the future maybe we'll have a better opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I mean, living my soft heart, like you said, what I'm dealing with my family right now is all about that to the max. So I have don't no doubts that the Creator brought me to this exact place that I'm in right now with that. And like I said, and I don't have any doubts that part of that is being able to be reminded about it by sitting here talking with you. So, and doing and continue to do what I can with my clients, with my, like sitting here and having this talk with the other people who are racial justice allies doing this kind of work. Do whatever I can to support that. But I also, part of the soft loving myself is having to have boundaries, which I've sucked at traditionally. Oh, I just, can you still hear me? I lost the picture.
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you and I can see you.
Yeah, I can't see anything. Let me see here.
Put a
Open
window
link.
in front of it, so it's still open.
Okay. Okay.
At this point, I
Um,
wanted to thank you for your service in the military and thank you for sharing as much of your journey that you have, you know, and the work that you've done and your healing journey. And um, I felt the need to say that you're an author, and I wanted to thank you for writing books about your experience, and wondered if you wanted to leave us with something from the book that you might have handy that you think is relevant.
well, there's a lot from the book that might be relevant, but I think I'll just leave with what at the end of the second book, which was all about not censoring my language. I had a section on loving meditations, and so yeah, I think I'd like to read that. So there's three separate mini meditations. So I want to invite us both to just take some deep breaths, some deep, soothing, comforting, loving breaths of life. Yeah, we've talked about some really important issues here, and they live deep inside of both of us. So the beginning says, addressing racial injustice. When I address the roots of evil racism and racial injustice, I do my best to focus more on the love I adore, rather than on the hatred and evil racism I abhor. That was adopted from a fellow named Walter Hilton he was a 14th century mystic and give us this day. And then I say, judge not. I do my best to judge not, lest I be judged. That's really a hard one. Really a hard one. I struggle with that every day. I pray for help with that every day. I offer myself. I offer myself my heart, my support, my comfort, my courage, my action to the marginalized and the oppressed, to all living things, to all the sacred. And I just want to end with what you said before. A Lakota term is Matake Yasin. All my relatives, all my relations, we are all one. We are all connected. We are all together in love. Thank you, Lexi. Thank you.
Thank you so much.